Hello, and welcome again to Finding Sanctuary. This is a series of discussions between Buddhist nuns about the Therigatha poems, which are poems composed by fully enlightened nuns at the Buddha's time. I'm Ayya Vimalanyani, and with me today is Venerable Munissara. Ayya, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So I will briefly introduce you to our audience. Venerable Munissara is a Thai national, born and raised in the Philippines. She received a BA in history from Harvard University and an MA in Southeast Asian Studies from Chulalongkorn University. She received her samaneri ordination in 2009 at Nirodharam Bhikkhuni Arama in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and her Bhikkhuni ordination in 2012 at Dhammasara Monastery in Perth, Australia. And currently she is living also at Dhammasara in Perth, which is a very beautiful place. I have been there 3 times and enjoyed it very much. And if you're interested, I will leave a link in the description box so you can check it out later. So Ayya, thank you so much for coming. And if you're ready, I think we can dive right into your poem.
Okay.
I will share my screen so that the viewers can read it. And can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so if you're ready, please go ahead and read out your poem.
Well, it is Dantika's poem.
Or Dantika's poem, exactly.
Okay. So leaving my day's meditation on Vulture's Peak Mountain, I saw an elephant on the riverbank, having just come up from his bath. A man taking a pole with a hook asked the elephant, "Give me your foot." The elephant presented his foot, and the man mounted him. Seeing a beast so tamed, submitting to human control, my mind became serene. That is why I've gone to the forest. So that's Therīgāthā 3.4, Venerable Dantika.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. This is actually one of the poems that inspired the title of this series, Finding Sanctuary, because she mentions, for the sake of sanctuary.
Yes, I noticed that.
Yes. So would you like to go ahead and tell us why you chose this poem?
It spoke to me because, when you're working with the mind, that saying that the mind is a beast, it becomes very real to you. It's a very unpredictable, and the mind has a mind of its own. It really is something that you really do feel like this is a very apt simile. This idea of what formerly must have been a wild elephant. That's what your mind feels like, when you're just doing your normal thing in daily life before you start to meditate. You might not notice that yet because you're just with the elephant. You are the elephant. You're just, rampaging here and there, knocking over banana trees, whatever, it's like part of your just normal way of being. And you don't even notice perhaps, but I can guarantee anyone who has tried to sit quietly, in meditation, you can probably experience this most vividly the first time you try to do that, unless you're very already naturally gifted from previous lives. But I mean, for most people, when you try to sit down with your, and just quieten your outside sounds, so, you're not saying anything through your mouth, but you'll find you've got all sorts of voices in your mind, and they go here, they go there, and if your elephant's in a bad mood, then it can be quite disruptive. But even if your elephant's tame, you see elephants in Thailand. We see lots of elephants, even in Bangkok. Sometimes you see elephants walking on the roadside, and even when they seem quite placid, they're always twitching, they're like, their ears are like flapping, their tails are moving, they're always like swaying side to side. you don't imagine, do you see Buddha any kind of like statues of elephants sitting in full lotus? They're not very still. And so our minds are like that, even when we're, maybe not on a rampage, but still there's always some minor movements or something. And it's something that takes a long time to train, and it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of courage. When you think of the mahouts, the elephant trainers, they can actually sit, on the back of an elephant when it's tame. But until it is tamed, that's a pretty daring thing to do, because elephant could just throw you off, or just lift you up with its trunk or something. And so sometimes that's what it's like with our mind. When you're first trying to you're like an amateur elephant trainer, and you're trying to befriend your mind and then train it. It takes some guts, it takes some courage. And this doesn't at first seem obvious, only over time, as a practice over the years, I appreciate more this aspect of courage. Because at first you just think it's a matter of learning some skills, how do you deal with your elephant mind? You just have to learn some skills. But actually it's more than that. And it takes courage for us to be able to even approach your mind when it is still wild and not yet tamed, to actually befriend this huge creature who can do so much damage if it felt like it. Even an elephant, when in Thailand they have these elephant farms, where for tourists and everything, the elephants are safe, they're tamed. But when they ask for volunteers, do you want to feed the elephant, or do you want to pet the elephant on the trunk? Most people are like, no thanks. You don't really want to go near this giant creature, even though, logically, it's probably okay. But there is some element of fear, because it's still this beast, this animal. And so the mind is the same. And even though in these verses it doesn't actually talk about that step, you already see the elephant that is tamed. We don't see the scenes where the elephant is still not tamed. I think a really important step before you even try to train it, to teach it tricks here, grab this banana or whatever, before you even teach it tricks, you have to befriend the animal first before you even try to tame it or train it. And this is something I've learned, slowly over the years, that actually we skip this step of befriending our minds and really just getting to know it, before we attempt to teach it these tricks in deep meditation or whatever. Just learning to befriend the mind and knowing that it can be trained and tamed. And seeing, humans, the equivalent of the elephant who have been trained is very inspiring. It's like the last stanza of the poem, where, because she sees this elephant that is tamed, and in her mind, she must be thinking, this is an analogy for the mind, that the mind can be trained. So when we see humans, well-advanced practitioners who have practiced well and who have been able to tame themselves, you really get an inspiration that this practice works. Yeah, well, I guess, that's what was inspiring about this, or what made this poem stand out to me, was this encouragement, that the mind can be tamed, and that is why we've taken up this training. The last line about, that is why I've gone to the forest.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, you can monastic life, like any kind of life, there's a lot of humdrum, day-to-day stuff you've got to do to keep the monastery going, or to, just, tasks that need to be done and that kind of thing. And it's good to always bear in mind, though, what the ultimate purpose of all of this is. and it is to train the mind and to use all of our activities, you know, even the ones that seem quite insignificant or mundane, that they can be used to serve the taming of the mind, to think of how we can keep working on this grander project, this ultimate goal of the mind. And this is something that it takes a clarity of one's purpose to be able to keep this in mind, even amidst, you know, the most, oh, you know how it is. You know, you can be talking about the most like seemingly, you know, unlofty topics, like, oh, where should we put the chairs, or, you know, this kind of thing, you know, and we can forget that. But yeah, I mean, I guess while we're debating about where should the chairs go, we can think of what skillful qualities we can develop in our minds as we do that, and to keep, you know, our elephant is with us all the time. Our elephant is by our side all the time. It's always there to be trained and to be tamed. And there are times, you know, when you feel, when you say, give me your foot, it does give you its foot, you know. Over time, when you start seeing your practice, you know, bearing some results, maybe not all the time, you know, but there are times when you do feel like, oh, you know, I'm having a bit more of a handle on my elephant now. And that's very encouraging to notice that when that does happen. You know, maybe your elephant isn't like obedient all the time, but all those times when it is, and maybe it is more and more. Maybe it is something that more and more you can notice that when your elephant's starting to go on some kind of, you know, unwholesome path, and you nudge it, you know, it stops and it redirects and it turns towards the wholesome. When you see that happening, it gives you greater confidence that this practice does work and this path does work, and that the elephant is coming around, and that you have to keep at it. And I'm sure trainers, you know, they must have good days with their elephant, the days when the elephants are a bit more amenable and whatever, and they think, that's right. By George, I think he's got it, you know. And then the next day, the elephant's like totally not cooperative again, and they're like, oh, what happened? But that's how it is until your elephant is completely tamed, and to be able to have patience with that, you know, have patience with and have faith in your elephant that even, today's maybe not in such a good mood, or maybe the elephant's very hungry right now, or something, you know. But that still, that work that you have done to train it is not lost, and that there is a foundation there that can be built on, and that you have to be able to, I feel like, I mean, I've never been an animal trainer, but I'm just imagining, right, that they have to have a certain level of trust in their elephant, you know, that even if it kicks out there, that it still is showing signs of heeding the trainer more, and the trainer keeps working with it until the elephant is more dependable in its response. That when you say, give me your foot, it does, you know, it doesn't give you its trunk, or it doesn't stomp on you with its foot, but it really just gives you its foot, you know. It's something that I guess with your own mind, you also have that sense of friendship, you know, that, okay, you're having a bit of a hiccup now, but, you know, still things can be moving in the right direction. And I guess I would maybe just add the piece about the going to the forest, because living in a forest monastery, you know, you really do see the value of practicing in nature and practicing secluded from the world, in a forest environment. And so having this example of you know, enlightened nuns who did go off and practice in the forest and work on training their elephant in the forest, and finally, lo and behold, their elephant became trained. It's something that you know, speaks to even modern day forest practice but we are trying to live in that way and to use the benefits of practicing in seclusion in the forest for this higher goal. So it's nice to feel that connection with the ancient forest nuns, and to feel we are in our own way, obviously different in many ways, but in some way we are still connected to that kind of lifestyle and that kind of practice. And hopefully even the modern day elephants will still be trained and tamed in a similar fashion. So yeah, that's the other thing that spoke to me from this verse.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I think this is a very good place to wrap up the video. So for our viewers,
okay,
if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comment section. We are going to answer them all in our live stream. And our next episode of Finding Sanctuary will be uploaded tomorrow. And finally, thank you again so much, Ayya Munissara, for coming onto the recording and for sharing your thoughts with us. It was such a pleasure to have you today.
You're welcome.